Hello everyone, this video is on capitalism and the flight response and how the two could be linked. And I sensed that when I was here in LA, that there is this tendency to want to produce exponentially. And that's great. There's an entrepreneurial spirit behind that growth, but exponential growth is okay when it's a sustainable exponential growth, but when it's an unsustainable exponential growth, then how come that isn't realized? How come the personality doesn't understand that the earth can't sustain that exponential growth? Now, if what we're taking from the earth we can give back and there's balance, great. Have that growth, be respectful while you're doing it. But to just stick your head in the sand and just go, and take, and build, and destroy the natural environment, where does that come from? Because it's a disorder. To take and to take and to take without the understanding of what that's going to do to the planet, where does that come from? It comes from some wounding, because we don't destroy the environment we live in unless there's something going on at a deep level to enable us to think it's okay to do that. Because we're connected to our environment. The trees are our lungs, our water sources, our body is connected to the ocean, to the rivers. We have to take care of our environment to take care of ourselves. And so if there's a destructive part that comes up and wants to stop taking care of our external body, because everything's part of you, even though you might perceive it as separate, it's actually part of you. There's a collapse of inner and outer and an understanding of oneness at certain levels of realization. So when the personality can just start destroying itself, where does that come from? And it comes from it can come from many places, but it comes from a trauma response which is linked to flight. And this is going to be what I'm going to be talking about in this video. Usually children, when they're in unsafe environments, can develop trauma responses. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn are the popular ones that are well known. They might want to fight their parents. They might want to freeze and just hide or run away. They might want to fawn, try and be the best child they can, try and make sure that mummy and daddy loves them. They might want to do those things. But capitalism, where does that come from? We weren't capitalists. We were at one point quite in sync with our environment, not taking more than we needed. So why did we start to take more than we needed? Where did this greed and sociopathy and destruction come from? Where did this disorder come from? And when you're in a flight response, when there's a lot of adrenaline and you just want to run, you kind of forget about everything else. And once the flight response is triggered, you just go. And there's a certain energy in capitalism, which is go, produce, not thinking of an outcome. A short-term outcome, which is you get more dollars in your bank account, but not a long-term outcome of, is this sustainable long term? is the economy capable of being capitalistic long term? Can we just produce, produce, produce? When is there going to be some balance? And I think that when children have flight responses, they can sometimes then become adults that need to produce, 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 because they get on this wheel, they get on this way of being where they don't pause to think about any bigger picture. And the ego gets attached to the production and to how the production makes them feel, and everybody else is living in that same bubble too that they're interacting with. Nobody really pauses and asks these questions because maybe they're really enjoying their lifestyle, or maybe they just are in such a triggered response. And so it's just interesting that it's not good or bad because the personality just is the way it is when it feels afraid or unsafe. When a personality feels insecure, unloved, afraid, it produces these responses. And if they're not healed, we turn into adults that feel that we're not okay unless we're go, 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 produce, 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 produce. And we can feel really uncomfortable when we stop. We can feel like we're not good enough when we stop. We feel like we're not going to be okay when something bad is going to happen. We need to be productive. Who are we if we're not producing? Are we even worthy of having an existence if we're not productive? We shame other people who we perceive as less productive. We glamorize being busy and producing, and the ego gets involved, and we get dopamine hits and just feel so superior to other people if we're producing and selling and consuming. And then we can just get jobs where we're selling people things they don't need. And this also can come from a feeling of we're not safe, or we can't survive unless we're part of a system, and nobody's really asking whether that system is sustainable or what mental illness created the system. A non-sustainable system is created from mental illness. And so the human species is mentally ill, unfortunately, and needs to be healed. And the quickest way to heal is to notice and to ask questions, and maybe to meditate and to pause and to say enough's enough. There is creative solutions. And as each individual heals on the planet, takes responsibility of healing their own wounding, they will show up differently in the world, and they will make different decisions, and they're more sustainable companies that come out of less wounded adults. Less wounded adults will produce more sustainable businesses. And so the realm of trauma responses is really interesting, and you may or may not be aware of your favorite trauma response. Is it fight? Is it flight? Is it freeze? Is it fawn, which is people pleasing? It's good to know what your primary one is, what your secondary one is, and how that leaks into the way you show up in relationships, or your work, or the way you perceive other people in the world. And maybe reflecting on it, and noticing the thoughts that come up around the flight response. People who have flight responses tend to want to travel a lot, and they feel really uncomfortable if they're not traveling, or they feel really uncomfortable if they're not producing, and they can't stop even when, the doctor says slow down, take it easy. They just can't. They just get so much momentum going. And so that's interesting to know and to note. Animals, being with animals can be helpful because they are in a permanent meditative state. They pause and they don't do anything that's not sustainable. They're not trying to please anybody, they're not trying to impress anybody. They don't take more from the environment than they need. Being in nature, being with animals can return us back to a more balanced psyche, which understands its interconnection with all beings and sustainability, how important that is. It also can be very healing to be around animals. They heal us. They are teachers. They radiate stillness. And we can just come up with solutions when we're around them. They're also, they're not just animals. There's a lot going on, and I've done videos on what that is. But in this video, I just wanted to focus on capitalism and the flight response. So my question is, what is your favorite preferred response to trauma? Is it fight? Do you like to fight people when you're anxious, when you're fearful or upset? Do you like to run away? Do you like to hide? Do you like to kind of get distracted and not do what you need to do and procrastinate? Do you fawn? Do you people please? Do you pretend you like people that you don't like? Do you put other people's needs above your own needs? Do you disassociate? Do you spiritually bypass? Do you? And I'll do other videos on that, but they're interesting responses in themselves. Could do many hours talking about them individually, but just asking, well, what is my individual trauma response? And how do I show up in the relationships in my life having that trauma response? How do I perceive the world and other people through the lens of that trauma response? And just notice. Just notice. There's such power in noticing. The consciousness that notices can dissolve the wounding. So it's not like you need to necessarily do anything about it. You can, if you have the privilege, to go into therapy and find somebody really good, or meditate if you have the time. But just noticing, just being interested and understanding why you do the things you do, or asking why society does the things it does. And oh, I noticed that. And just the noticing, because if enough people notice, because we're so interconnected, it dissolves the wounding that's a collective wounding. There is a collective flight response happening in humanity that caused capitalism to even exist. That's very important to know, that it's not just one individual that created capitalism. It's a whole load of individuals that were feeling very insecure and on the run. And because of that energy, run, 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 go, 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 it created that model, but it was never really reflected on. But if we start to go into a more reflective mode of being, if everybody does that, or even just a small population does that, then it will shift humanity. It will shift the collective stress. It will dissolve a lot of that. And people will start to feel safer. People will start to feel more connected to animals, to plants. Their heart space will open. They won't want to destroy the planet. They'll want to produce sustainable business. It will feel uncomfortable to just take. Selfishness comes from a lack of understanding of your interconnection with the planet, a lack of realization that there is oneness between you and your environment. And so we need to connect back to that oneness. And in order to connect back to that oneness, we need to dissolve the stress and to take time to pause. Maybe we do the contemplation, maybe we meditate, maybe we ask some deep questions, maybe we start to understand ourselves and other people at a deeper level without shaming them. Humans are not bad, they're just wounded little kids that are in a flight response, creating things out of that flight response. That they need healing, they need tenderness, they need care, they might need help, they might need rehabilitation. So we can rehabilitate humanity just through wanting change. If enough people want change, creative solutions will arise from that desire for change. Thoughts are shared, everything's shared. Solutions can come up from a desire for wanting things to change. And I think that there is definitely a desire for wanting a new way. And maybe this video is just a tiny little dot, like a tiny little grain of sand in a beach of other ideas that can come from other people. And so we all do our best to reduce our stress as much as we can. And so I pray that we all realize where we are wounded, just noticing it, and in the noticing of it, become more compassionate towards ourselves and other beings, and have the capacity to come up with creative solutions so that we can create a happy earth for all beings and sustainability in businesses.